Authorities begin clearing barriers at CITIC Tower in Admiralty. Shinzo Abe calls snap election. And a deadly attack on a Jerusalem synagogue.
Good evening. Bailiffs began removing barricades from outside the CITIC Tower in Admiralty on day 52 of the Occupy protests. The operation was mostly peaceful, but there were arguments over the scope of the injunction. Our Joao De Silva has our top story.
Police were at the scene first and were followed by dozens of bailiffs who arrived at CITIC Tower at around 9:30 this morning. The court order that also clears the way for barricades and other obstructions on Team May Avenue and Lung Wei Road to be removed was read over a megaphone before the operation began. Half an hour later and workers were busy at it as protesters stood and watched nearby to ensure bailiffs did not dismantle barricades not covered by the injunction. Metal barriers were carried onto a truck nearby. Meanwhile, some Occupy volunteers helped to move and dismantle some of the barricades on Lung Wei Road. One of them, Alex Kwok, explained that rather than allowing the barriers to be taken away, some activists preferred to keep them themselves. The operation was generally smooth. But it was briefly disrupted here as bailiffs and CITIC Tower staff moved to clear barricades by the roundabout at the junction of Lung Wei Road and Team May Avenue. Scholarism convener Joshua Wong and Tommy Jung of the Hong Kong Federation of Students accused bailiffs of overstepping their duties.
For the injunction arrangement today, we are quite disappointed, and we think that it's just an excuse to clear more of the tents as much as possible.
Bailiffs should also explain the areas because they have used the wider definition of the injunction order. They should clearly explain why they have to remove the barricades.
Democratic Party legislator Albert Ho was also there. He reasoned with the bailiffs and CITIC Tower representatives, saying that vehicles would be able to enter and leave the building with only half the roundabout open to traffic. They eventually reached agreement, and today's clearance operation ended at around 3 p.m. after tents and other objects left behind were removed. More than 50 days into it, and Occupy protesters budged to what they see largely as a judicial decision. But they're making sure that barricades here are not moved 1 inch more than required by the courts. Joao De Silva, TVB News.
Our Joao De Silva is still in Admiralty tonight. He joins us now for the latest. Joao, over to you.
Hi Sonia, everything is peaceful and orderly here outside the CITIC Tower, where for the first time in 52 days cars have been able to both enter and leave the building's car park. Now, protesters that were camped out here have now mostly moved onto Harcourt Road, but there are still barricades here which may have to be removed in the coming days. Now, one of the contentious issues today was certainly the area covered by the injunction. Protesters here complained that the terms of this court order were very vague, which raises the question of what will happen when similar court orders are enforced in other protest sites. That's all from me. Back to you in the studio.
Thanks, Joao. That again was Joao De Silva reporting live from Admiralty. Now, it is still not clear yet when enforcement action would be taken at the Mongkok protest site. 2 interim injunctions apply to the protesters there. More on that from Liz Yoon.
The court order covering a section of Argyle Street between Tung Choi and Portland Streets was published in the newspapers by the minibus company that applied for the order. It says no objects are allowed to be displayed on the roads as they disrupt traffic. It also forbids anyone from obstructing bailiffs while they are enforcing the order. The bailiffs may take reasonable and necessary steps to remove obstacles, and police officers may assist in their operation upon request. Anyone who does not comply with the order may be guilty of contempt of court. But the minibus company's legal representative Maggie Chan said the company would not post the order at the Mongkok sites for the time being. Another interim injunction order granted to taxi groups covers a section of Nathan Road. The solicitor representing the taxi groups, Phyllis Kwong, said the orders will be served on newspapers tomorrow at the earliest. Sporadic scuffles broke out in Mongkok in the early hours today. Here, Occupy marshals tried to calm the protesters down. There was a standoff with the police. Officers urged protesters to leave and remove obstacles on the roads. No injuries were reported. Lis Yun, TVB News.
Chief Executive Leung Chun-ying repeated this morning that he sees no point in protesters continuing the Occupy movements. And the Secretary for Justice has rejected allegations the government is hiding behind the courts amid the political deadlock. Diane To reports.
Speaking before the weekly Executive Council meeting, just as barricades were being removed from the CITIC Tower area, the Chief Executive said he believes it's clear that protesters have been breaking the law.
Hong Kong is a law-abiding society, and the rest of Hong Kong expect the occupiers, like everyone else in Hong Kong, to follow the law. The demands on the part of the occupiers when it comes to the constitutional development, especially universal suffrage to elect a chief executive in 2017, is also very clear. So I don't see any point in resisting the court order.
Leung was also asked about a move by mainland authorities to deny protesters entry. This comes as members of the Federation of Students found out their home return permits had been voided when they tried to fly to Beijing on Saturday to talk to state leaders about political reform. Leung didn't say if he'd asked officials there for a reason, only saying that it's the business of law enforcement across the border. Meanwhile, Secretary for Justice Rimsky-Yoon responded today to former Chief Justice Andrew Lee's comments that the Occupy protests are a political issue and cannot be resolved by the courts. Saying that he agrees, Yoon said the courts should not and would not interfere in political issues. But he added that if it also involves legal issues, such as whether people are breaking the law, then related parties have the right to ask the courts for help. Yoon also rejected accusations that the government is hiding behind the court amid the stalemate, saying that is a biased opinion and that anyone suggesting that may have other motives. Diane To, TVB News.
Overseas now, and Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe has called a snap election for mid-December. Abe also announced a proposed sales tax rise set for next October will be delayed until 2017. This comes after data released yesterday showed Japan had slid into recession, largely because the first phase of the tax hike led to huge cutbacks in consumer spending. The tax rise from 5% to 8% in April was aimed at addressing Japan's huge debt, which is more than double the size of GDP. Abe returned to power in December 2012, pledging to revive the economy. His Abenomics is based on hyper-easy monetary policy, government spending, and reform. Abe said he'll dissolve Parliament on Friday. Australia and India have finalized a series of bilateral agreements that include a sweeping free trade pact. In addition to expanding economic ties, the two nations are also signaling greater cooperation on regional security. James Aiken reports.
Prime Minister of the Republic of India.
The agreements were finalized as Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi made a state visit to the Australian capital following the G20 summit in Brisbane. The deals include social security, cooperation against drug trafficking, prisoner transfers, and tourism. But regional security has also been high on the agenda.
Our region has seen huge progress on the foundation of peace and stability. But we cannot take this for granted. Preserving it will be the most important task in the region. India and Australia can play their part in it by expanding our security cooperation, and deepening our international partnerships in the region.
Modi's remarks come a day after President Xi Jinping told the Australian Parliament that China is committed to peaceful development and resolving territorial disputes. India, like other regional neighbors, has had drawn-out territorial disputes with China.
Even when they have bitter disputes, we should collaborate more on maintaining maritime security. We should work together on the seas and collaborate in international forums. And we should work for a universal respect for international law and global norms.
Australia is emerging as a key source of energy for India, and the two nations are working on deals to secure nuclear energy as well as conventional fuels to help New Delhi overcome chronic shortages.
Yes, Australia has recently signed, recently negotiated free trade agreements with Korea, Japan, and now China. But we're not resting on our laurels. We're not satisfied with just that. We want to go further, and that's why the next priority for Australia is a comprehensive economic partnership agreement with India.
Modi's visit was the first trip by an Indian Prime Minister in 28 years to one of Washington's closest allies in the Asia-Pacific. James Aiken, TVB News.
4 people are dead after they were attacked while worshiping inside a synagogue in Jerusalem. Israeli police say 2 Palestinians stormed the synagogue with knives, axes, and guns before they were killed in a shootout with officers. It is the deadliest attack in Jerusalem in years and comes amid soaring tensions over a contested holy site. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says his country will respond harshly to the attack. Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas has condemned the attack, but he also called for an end to Israeli provocations surrounding the sacred site. A French citizen has been identified as one of the militants in the latest Islamic State beheading video. With another American murdered, U.S. President Barack Obama has ordered a review of policies governing efforts to free Americans held by militants.
Video of the beheading of American aid worker Peter Kassig and the mass beheadings of a group of Syrian military personnel has made for valuable intelligence. The grisly mass murders featured each of the knife-wielding extremists up close, allowing authorities to identify at least some of them. France's interior minister is certain one of them is a Frenchman from the Normandy region. They identified him as 22-year-old Maxime Oshad, who converted to Islam. In a recent interview, Oshad said he was joining the Islamic State to become a martyr. Further scrutiny will determine if a second Frenchman is also involved. Intelligence experts in Britain are scrambling to determine if any of their citizens are among those militants. One British man is denying earlier reports that he recognized his son, who's a medical student, in the video. The British Prime Minister insists new anti-terrorism laws are blocking British citizens from joining the Islamic State.
As the House knows, these include new powers for police at ports to seize passports, to stop suspects from travelling, and to stop British nationals returning to the UK unless they do so on our terms.
An angry U.S. Secretary of State made it clear Americans are not scared of cowards who behead the innocent.
Well, let us be clear. We are not intimidated. Our friends and partners are not intimidated. ISIL is very, very wrong.
Those who knew Peter Kassig best said he was the best of humanity.
He had this overwhelming positivity that if you just tell one person, if he just tries his best and gives everything he has, then that's